Can we come back one year when you run London really badly and I do it really well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fine. Yeah. You might be waiting a while.
2 runners who ran the London Marathon 2 hours apart, and thanks to Garmin, we're going to do a deep dive into all of their watch data, and they're joining me here today as well. I've got Chris Thompson, British distance runner, 2-time Olympian, and my fellow roommate from the London 2012 Olympics, more memorable for me than for him, I think. James from the Running Channel, this was his 35th marathon, a self-confessed marathon lover. He must be a marathon lover if he's done it 35 times. We're going to do a deep dive into their marathon data to see whether it's a different experience depending on your finish time, to find out what we can learn from each of their experiences and from the data itself. So I'm really excited to get stuck in. Some of the data is amazing and I'm a self-confessed numbers geek, so let's get stuck in. So we're going to start off at the beginning and basically go through the marathon section by section. But before we do that, we'll go to the end, which is what time did you finish the marathon in?
2:11:50.
And what was your target?
Well, yeah, I didn't have a time as such, but that was more to do with there wasn't any qualifications I was particularly looking for. I was just looking to maximise my performance on the day, and so based on how close I got to what I felt I could do on the day was going to determine my happiness level. Happiness-o-meter. Is that a word?
Yeah. And the strategy then is based on like running to your max on that day, so running to feel.
Yeah, running. Yeah, a lot of my training building up to it was based around feel and trying to find that marathon red line and trying to get cozy with it. And then on the race day, I was trying to do the same thing and I was more focused on that than I was about splits in terms of visually. I was kind of using it as a gauge, but ultimately I was trying to run. It was between me, my body, and the marathon.
To put those stats into context, that's 5-minute miling or 3:06 per kilometre on average, which is incredible. Come on to the deeper dive into the data. But James, what was your finish time?
I was quite similar times, but no, I did it in 4:46:52.
So 4:46, what was your target?
3:59.
3:59, okay. I'm not laughing because of what ended up happening. I'm laughing, it's a big differential and I know the story behind it. So
yeah, I mean, I did the opposite of what we were doing. I went for a time rather than feel. So I ignored how my body was feeling for basically the entire race.
So not only did we have 2 massively...
Sorry. Sorry. I just wondered what that was. No, I was such a child.
Not only do we have 2 very different time goals and ultimate aims for the day, we ended up with 2 massively different experiences on the day. So I'm really interested to hear how it all went. How do you approach that first mile or so when you're trying to settle into the rhythm of the race?
The initial bit of these races are actually not too dissimilar to other distances I do, which is trying to calm yourself down and actually get into the rhythm of what that race is. And so London Marathon, as you know, is intense. There's a lot of people, a lot of spectators. The start line is pretty packed. You go from a tent that's all quiet in your own little bubble to lots of noise, lots of people, and you don't warm up too much as well. So the first mile is very much about finding your group because there's usually about 5 or 6 different pacemakers. But you're all just trying to find your spot. You're looking for the people that were on the sheet that you know in your pace group. And then you're just trying to just literally get comfortable because again, you've got so much energy and you've been so rested that you're trying not to get carried away because it's quite easy to run 10, 20 seconds quicker than where you should be, and so and again, the start, as you know, is
Yes, love to me. I don't know what the start's like.
Have you done London?
No, I haven't done a marathon.
Have you done them? Oh,
so this is, I'm getting as much data as I can.
That's really embarrassing. I mean, he's interviewing us. Sorry, guys.
It's totally fair.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get as much information as I can for my first marathon this year. So.
The first 5K is quite fast, so you have to take that into account and just be mindful of that. And so therefore, it's all about just getting into rhythm, getting into the breathing rhythm, and just calming yourself down and getting down to the job at hand, basically.
Yeah, because we can see in the data from both of your heart rates, it takes a little bit of time, regardless of the level that you run at, for your body to catch up. So your heart rate takes a while to respond to the pace that you're going at. But you settled into a nice even pace right from the beginning. And then, even though you mentioned the first 5K being downhill and so on, there's incredible consistency on your pace graph of the pace that you're running at each 5K, but also every kilometre, there's very little fluctuation.
I mean, we have very good pacemakers to help with that a little bit as well, especially up until usually it depends how far they go, like sometimes halfway, so you can key off another runner and switch off to the pace. But for me, I did actually later on peel off because of my effort, and they were going a bit too quick.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of marrying up that these guys they're not robots. They're not going to get it necessarily perfect. So you do have to be mindful. So there is that kind of gauge of someone trying to hit a pace, and you're trying to gauge, are they too fast, too slow? How am I feeling? So there's a few different things going on, but there is kind of a GPS person going along trying to help you.
So then, James, what was your finish time and what were you aiming for?
So a finish time was 4:46, a little bit different.
Close.
To yours, but,
Close.
and I was aiming for 3:59. So when I signed up for London, I thought I could get a good bank of training in. My PB at London a couple of years before was 4:14, so I thought, great, that's doable. But then my training did not go to plan.
But you still stuck with that ambitious target on the day?
Oh yeah, because I'm blissfully unaware of my own inabilities when it comes to race day, and just arriving in the starting pen and there only being the sub 4 hour pacer, I thought, well, what's the worst that could happen?
Well, we're about to find out later in this video, I think. When we look at the stats.
As soon as I got into the race, in the first 3K, I already kind of knew it wasn't going to be a great idea, but I just kept pushing on to see how long it would last.
Often the wall is later, right? The wall is at 20 miles, but when we come to that third quarter of the race, we're going to see a very physical wall in the data, I think.
I mean, I've never run a marathon this badly in terms of pacing before.
Well, that's great, because we've also got the perfect example of how you should run a marathon in this perfectly flat, incredibly well-paced data. So, yeah, there
Can
we
we
go.
come back one year when you run London really badly and I do it really well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You might be waiting a while.
So we've come through 10K, 6.2 miles. We're into the next bit when you're starting to really have to focus. And there's something which I've spotted, which I think is interesting anyway. Comparing your two stride lengths, there's a massive difference. We'll come on to the actual numbers in a minute. But also, you can see really regular disruptions to your stride pattern from your data, which I'm guessing are drinks or fueling stops.
Drink stations are messy, especially the first few, because there's more of you trying to visualize, you're trying to see where the drinks are. And there are times where I slow down to a steady run pace just so I can get space, because your choice is either speed up or slow down.
Yeah.
And so it will be affected very much so around those times.
How hard is it to grab it and then also to drink it? And that must affect, you're not able to use one arm whilst you're drinking, so that changes the way that you're running.
I don't know, it's one of those weird things. Some people don't make a drama out of it and it's like second nature, just do it. I'm one of those nervous drink grabbers. My first marathon, I actually missed a drink, went back for it, and it was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. Grabbed it and went, and there was a 20-30 meter gap, and I never got it back,
just couldn't get back on.
because again I was gonna have to go over. So it seems so small, but it makes a difference of, do you grab from the side or you come down on the bottle? I'm a two-handed swipe.
Just maximise
Pincer movement, and I never very nearly collide with the bottle table, and I have been known to knock other bottles, and it's messy. If there's a camera footage of it, I look like a drunk runner.
Yeah, well, you're out there for over 2 hours,
and
you've got to spot it and then totally disrupt your route because you've got to deviate. You're also going to slow down. As you said, you'll choose to slow down. So that changes your stride length, your cadence, the two things that go together, the running dynamics that you can see on the watch.
And carrying it and drinking it. Before, it used to be drink as much as you could within probably 20 seconds of grabbing it and throw it. Now, because there's a lot more emphasis on getting as much as you can in, I was running with the bottle in my hand for like 3-4 minutes, which again, you're kind of affecting how you're running a little bit as well, because sometimes you're trying to catch up the group, sometimes you're relaxing, let everyone come together. So it's a good 4 or 5 minutes of interruption.
What's more amazing then is to see that, yes, your stride length was disrupted and the cadence to compensate for that, but actually your pace still stayed really flat. The stride length specifically, let's compare here, because I think this does highlight a difference in the pace that you're going. Chris, you started with a stride length of 1 meter 80, 1.8 meters. And that's certainly in the first quarter or so of the race. James, for comparison, your stride length on average throughout the race was around just over 1 meter. So it's almost twice. So 1.8 to 1.05 is a big difference.
Incredible.
Yeah, that shocks me actually, to be fair. I wouldn't have guessed that, but yeah.
Yeah, and you're not the tallest runner. So having
Thanks very much.
because it does change for you. It's one of the few stats that changed a little
really?
bit, not
Okay.
massively, but in terms of percentage terms. By the end, when you're getting tired, you're having to compensate with stride length and cadence. So we'll talk about that when we get towards the end of the race.
You'll have, tens of people to compete with to get to the.
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
I'll have hundreds of people, and it is, especially with London Marathon, where there are so many amazing people who are coming to marathon having maybe never even done a race before.
Yeah.
It becomes a bit of a free for all.
So at this point, we're between 10k and 20k. You're still fine from a pace perspective.
I'm feeling great. It was more every time I got through a mile, looking down my watch and being like, yeah, I've hit it. I've hit it. Everything felt like it was still going very well, but I also knew that there was going to come an end point of this. It wasn't going to be 26.2 was not going to be the end of this pace. It was going to be somewhere between, I was hoping, between 17 and 21 was where I thought I would come off.
So we've gone over Tower Bridge, turned right, just gone past halfway. Halfway split for you, 1:05.26, which does show you how consistent you were throughout the whole marathon. So there's only less than 1 minute differential between your first half and your second half.
Yeah.
And then James, your halfway split is 2:01.59, and some other stats here. You started the first few kilometres at 5:32 per kilometre. At this stage, you're now running 6 minutes per kilometre. I think maybe that's slowing down a little bit, but that's a sign of what's to come.
Yeah, I definitely knew cresting over Tower Bridge that I was about to reach the point of no return.
But yeah, you can see up to this point. So, I mean, there's this huge drop, 14.6 miles in, where your pace drops right off. But before that, your heart rate has been so high.
Even though it was quite a cold, wet day, I was starting to feel myself overheating. Again, coming over Tower Bridge, there was just so many parts of me that were like, this isn't right anymore. And then as I came down into mile sort of 15 and a half, I felt like there was something slightly wrong. I didn't realize at the time. I just unlocked a new achievement on my Garmin watch of a highest max heart rate.
Brand new max heart rate. So
Congratulations.
yeah, it's just what you wanted.
Yeah. So I actually
timing.
stopped, which you can see on the graph, in one of the portaloos and tried to calm my body down, because I thought there's no way that this race is even going to be finished, let alone at any kind of time. So that was basically what I threw away, any idea of going for a PB.
Yeah. The watch is picking up automatically that you'll run walking as well. Funnily enough, Chris says run for 100% of the time, just to rub that in.
I was
A little
definitely
more.
running, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for the one of thinking about it, if that helps.
We're in the tough period. Now, there's another stat which I find interesting, which we don't talk about loads in running, which is running power. You might never have considered it. It's used a lot in cycling. But just a comparison here. So James's average power throughout his whole marathon is 315 watts. And Chris, you're maintaining for the whole marathon basically 500 watts, 495 watts. Compare that to a Tour de France cyclist, which is probably averaging like 300 watts. Their stages are a bit longer, and there's a metabolic difference in the way you measure running power, so it will always be higher. But those numbers still seem like you can see the difference there, and people assume that sometimes it's easier for elite runners because you're used to running fast, but I imagine it still feels pretty hard. So we've passed mile 20, we're coming into the last 6 miles, so we're going to talk through that now. And we've got the luxury here of speaking to someone who's essentially paced the perfect marathon because of 20 years of practice. Sorry, not to age you too much.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what we can learn from this, but it's equally possible that any type of finish time or target that you've got to pace yourself better than you did, basically, and therefore perhaps have a more enjoyable marathon and soak up the atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. The marathon I did prior to this, I paced a perfect 5 hour. I used the Garmin Pace Pro and paced it for a perfect 5 hour and finished at exactly 5 hour mark. So, and that was a far much enjoyable experience, rewarding experience, and obviously a more proud moment than finishing with 4:46, having gone out, paced awfully. A much more enjoyable experience when you actually pace a race perfectly, regardless of the time, I think. It's that reward of being like, I'm running this exactly how I want to run a race.
You're more in control than it's in control of you.
Yeah, exactly.
James, big change in cadence. Your average cadence throughout the whole run ended up being around 140, but in your first half that was around 155. So you can see how much your average has been dropped by, I suppose, that run-walk combination in that last 10 miles or so.
Yeah, I definitely went to extremes of walking. So chatting to, I met my family at that point, and and everyone from the running channel. Although when I came past everyone on the running channel, my cadence would have increased because I wanted to look like I was having a really
24.
easy, enjoyable time at that point. So I waved as I sprinted past, because it definitely was not a sprint at that time. But yeah, there was these massive varieties, which is very clear in the data of me taking it very easy and then going, I feel amazing, and then it lasting a couple of strides, and then suddenly, I'm out of energy again.
Yeah, and I want to go back to Chris's stride length. We said that earlier on, the first half of the race, your stride length is like that 1m80, which is incredibly impressive. And then it's not a massive change, but by the end, everyone gets tired. So even at your level, your stride length had changed by 10, 11 centimeters.
Okay.
So 1m69 I've got written down here, which over that distance is about 5%, I think. So that's enough, and you would have had to compensate for that with cadence, because your pace did still stay consistent. So are you having to consciously dig in to turn over your legs a little bit quicker when you're getting tired?
No, the way I describe it was that initially I kind of feel like I'm on the front foot, so I'm trying to push the pace or push my body forward. In the second half, as I get tired, the kind of the default I go into is I allow, especially some of the technical bits around Canary Wharf and going under bridges and that, I just let my body move. I just let it do massage through the course as it wants to, and that will account for some of it, that I'm not forcing it. I'm just allowing my legs to turn over how they want to turn over, and the energy that I get from that, I kind of utilize for the speed I need to turn over, basically. But the stride length is very much dictated by just allowing my legs to turn over in the way they want to, because that's a way for me of preserving energy. So it's a bit of mind games, but it's kind of allowing it to happen while at the same time trying not to fade too much with your pace. Hence where that minute kind of difference between first and second is kind of, it's a very subtle thing. It doesn't feel a huge amount different, but the mind games you're playing with yourself are quite different.
Common things that people fatigue in longer races is their stride length shortens, their hips sink, their ground contact time increases, all of those things. And you can't see any of those things in your data. All of your data points stay purple, which is the best it can be. So ground contact time is something that I think is interesting. So there's a lot of chat about elites usually having a ground contact time under 200 milliseconds. Your average is 194.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. Surprise to you as well.
I'm an elite.
Yes. So that's how long each foot spends on the ground on average.
Yeah.
And then your vertical oscillation combined with your vertical ratio, which is basically how much you might be wasting energy going up and down versus forwards. Obviously you want to move forwards more than you go up and down. Again, they're really low, so you're not wasting energy with vertical movement. If it means anything to you, 9.5 centimeters is your vertical oscillation, so that's how much you're going up and down. With a vertical ratio of 5%, purple numbers mean really high running efficiency. And the fact that you're able to maintain that through to the end, I think you only have to go and watch the last few hundred meters of any major marathon, and you can see people's running form probably doesn't look like yours looked. So really long build up to ask you a question about how much you're thinking about your running form.
I mix up how I approach sessions, so I will do an hour tempo and I'll be very fixated on time and making certain I stick to target time, and I will also do it without looking at my watch at all and see how close I can get, and I marry up the two feelings. And the reason behind it is because I'm trying to hit the pace but in as relaxed fashion as I can, because it can be you can tense up and affect how you're running when you've got a time like you were chasing and your body kind of is more preoccupied by that target or that pace you're trying to hit, and I'm trying to make it a natural response without me thinking and worrying about it and stressing about it. So for an example, before London I did exactly that. I ran an hour tempo in the morning, and on the same route, and I ran an hour tempo in the evening, and without looking at my watch. In the morning I ran 12 miles, and I can't remember all the splits. I'd have to look at it if we want to look at it, but there was about 50-second difference, and I was faster without looking at my watch than looking. And the objective was, for all those numbers you've just said, to work and be relaxing, is to enable myself to do that through not worrying about external pressures and find that rhythm so that my body can function in the most efficient way. But I had quite a few marathons where I did have quite big blow-ups. My cadence and all these numbers were not right because I was just too running with a tensed upper body. I was forcing, I was chasing, and all these different factors. And so, which is why it's nice looking at these numbers, because it's marrying up to the fact that I'm probably doing a better job than I realise at finding that efficiency pace for me in training and taking it into races.
Let's go to James. You crossed the finish line. How do you manage to enjoy the last half when you change your mindset and actually maybe ended up doing what Chris said here? You're not chasing anything anymore.
Yeah, I definitely had a more enjoyable time in the second half than most of the first half.
Yeah.
So again, coming into the last kind of mile, which I love that last bit because you know that it's coming, but you don't see the finish line until you're almost on it. So I again enjoyed it a lot more, running to feel, and it's just a far more enjoyable experience.
There's an amazing feature on the watches where you actually, there's a rate, you get to register how hard it was for you out of 10, and you said it was a 1. It was a 1, and you just felt neutral about it.
I thought it meant 1 was the hardest and 10 was the easiest.
Yeah, that's how marathon brain works, right?
Yeah. You know, I don't even remember registering that. Like, I was just too tired. I have to admit, like, I was a bit emotional at the end for many different reasons. I'm kind of an emotional guy. We get a bit emotional when we get older, don't we? The guards come down a bit. Come on, just let it out. And so I was a bit kind of, as I usually am, I was a bit daisy and hazy afterwards. So I just, if you want to change it to 10, you can do. It's probably more like a 6.
Well, no, we're going to cut there. That's the end of the video. Well, that very much satisfied the stats geek inside me. Thank you very much to Chris and to James for sharing their data. I really appreciate it, and I hope it was useful for you. I'd love to know what your marathon experiences have been like. Let us know in the comments, and please give me some advice. What should I do when I'm approaching my first ever marathon later this year? But enough of me. Now you should check out this video here where Sarah took on a marathon on no sleep and jet lag.